All right. So we have Ricky Lung as our head of product. I'm Chuck Anderson, senior developer mentor. C. Fisher is an apprentice. KJ Loving is an apprentice. Jennifer McDougall is an apprentice. And Natalie Petrolino as an apprentice. So the problem that our app is addressing is that North Carolina legislation lacks transparency, and there are national legislation trackers that support state legislation, but their scrapers don't update as frequently and may not have dedicated support within the state. So our solution is that we periodically scrape the ncledge.gov website to find information about legislators, committees, meetings, and legislation, and then allow users to track and search that information while receiving real-time alerts relevant to the user via SMS text messages and email alerts. The current status is that after 4 years, Upstate is now widely used by nonprofits, journalists, and government agencies to track all new NC legislation. Upstate was primarily built on Ruby on Rails with a PostgreSQL database. Outside the Rails environment, we use Docker for scheduled jobs, SendGrid to send email alerts, SignalWire for text message alerts, FFmpeg to record meetings, Assembly AI for speech recognition and transcriptions, Google Civics API for legislator lookup, and DigitalOcean for deployment. And now I'll do a demo of our app. So this is the dashboard. This is where the user lands, and this is populated by all the information that was scraped from the NC Ledge website. On the left, we have the legislative calendar, which represents all the upcoming General Assembly meetings, links to those upcoming meetings, any bills that might be discussed, and several places you'll see a track button bill, and you can use that to follow bills and receive alerts about them. The middle section has to do with the bills themselves that are being discussed. You can represent them by the bills that are filed, the bills you're following, bills by current actions. You can also sort by date range. And on the right, we have our custom alert notification. So you can define custom alerts, and these are just your dashboard alerts. So I've defined education and board, and we can see that they were detected 2 months ago in the keywords. Education, board, and fund were detected about 16 hours ago in the bill text itself that was ratified. You can see links to the bill versions there. You can also track the bills just by clicking a button. It says we're now following S912. And these are dashboard notifications. In addition, you can set text message alerts and email alerts. And now if you wanted to see one place where all the bills you're tracking, you can go over to the My Bills page. And I'll turn it over to Jennifer to talk a little bit about this.
All right, so like Chuck said, the My Bills page is the collection of bills that the user follows. On this page, they can personalize the bills by, for example, setting their position to support, monitor, oppose, or leaving it blank. They can also add personalized tags and can also add their notes to the bills. I'll slow down so Chuck can keep up with that. And then they can add notes. They can also set up email or text message alerts for specific bills to get notified on any updates or changes. They can also set up alerts for when the House or Senate is going into session. So the user from here can also sort or filter the bills that they followed. For example, the user could sort out the bills that have already become law so they can focus on the bills that aren't law yet and that might need more advocacy action. On this page, the user can also export their bills either to a CVS or to a doc. If the user has any of those filters applied, or if they had done a search before they export, those are also carried over into the export. They can also choose, for example, like if they want their notes included or if they want their position included or not. That makes it really easy for them to set up more specific bill exports instead of just exporting all of the bills that they do follow. I'll pass it over to KJ so she can talk more about the advocacy action.
Hey everyone, welcome to Upstate's Advocacy Center. In the Advocacy Center, users are able to keep their supporters engaged and informed through our customized advocacy actions. You're able to create custom advocacy actions where you can target specific legislators or committees, giving followers a quick way to get in contact with their legislators and committee members. As you can see here. And then you are also able to pre-do templates for your supporters. You're able to help them write letters to their legislators by including optional templates for supporters to email their legislators through the take action section of an advocacy action. You can go to the completed one, Chuck. The test, yep. Okay, in the take action section right over there on the right, supporters can email legislators using they can pick one from this list. And if they don't know who their legislator is, they're able to use our legislator lookup tool. You can enter in any address and it'll spit back your representatives. Okay, and then if you close that check, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see where you can send an email. You can use the optional template provided in the advocacy action that we make when we create it, or supporters can send their own message. And once an advocacy action has been published, could you go back to the other screen, Chuck, where the advocacy center? Back to the advocacy actions. You can use the custom embed to the right to embed this directly onto your site for users to see. And it's editable. The height and width is all editable for the modal. Not only can you embed your advocacies, you can also embed your custom bills to the bills that you're following. Over at could you go to the left, Chuck, and click on your embed? You can embed the bills that you're following, and you can customize it to fit your needs. So you can show only the ones that you support. You can show specific bills. You can show them by categories. And I will pass it off to C for our legislators page.
Okay, so let's talk about the legislators. We have all the representatives in North Carolina listed, and we have them split into House and Senate. You are able to sort them by name, by the representatives' district they serve, and their political party. You can also search for the representative by name, county, or district if you know exactly who you're looking for. When you click on your representative of choice, it gives a bio and the link that will go to their page on the North Carolina legislative website. That way you can get to know them a little more. And every representative's page is going to have 3 categories: their voting history, their introduced bills, and sponsorship insights. Upstate is all about showing transparency in bills and legislation, so we have chosen to show how the legislators vote on those bills. So in voting history, it shows how the representative voted on the bill and whether that bill has been passed or not and what the result is. In introduced bills, it shows what bills they help introduce and how many sponsors and co-sponsors and supporters that they have for that bill. And then in sponsorship insights, you'll get to see the representatives and who they sponsored for those bills and what they were introduced. And if you click on the number of bills, sorry, Chuck, if I'm going too fast, it will show all the bills that they have voted on and sponsored together. So the different representatives that have worked together on certain bills. Every page has its own filter option to do more of a deep dive when you're looking for something very specific. And introduced bills even has the option to export the table as a CSV. And then I will pass it over to Natalie.
So our recordings feature is one of my personal favorites. On the NC Legislative website, they do have some videos of some recordings of legislative meetings, but they don't have all of them. So our app live records every single meeting, and you can find them all in this one location, which you can also navigate via the calendar. And there's also ways to search and sort through each meeting. You can search by date. You can obviously search by name, and each meeting has a full transcript available that is auto-transcribed from the audio recording. And one really cool aspect about this is that you can click anywhere on the transcript on any word and it'll take you to that exact part in the recording.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'm just standing in for Representative Winslow.
And you can also download the audio recording and export the transcript to PDF. Oh, and you can search for any phrase within the transcript.
It's a good piece of legislation.
And
Right. Thank you, Natalie. So those are some of the key features that we have in the app. And now we can go through some of the apprentice experiences and talk about some of the things they've worked on individually.
All right, so I'm Jennifer. One of the biggest learning challenges, but also the most enjoyable, has been working with an existing code base. It's been pretty tricky for me trying to understand why the code was written as it was, and then also becoming more comfortable in making changes to the code instead of just trying to work around what's already there. I tend to kind of want to leave the code as it is, and so I've been working on getting more comfortable with understanding why it is the way it is so that I know if it's okay for me to make big changes or not. One of the first tickets that I worked on was updating the text message alerts to include the specific bills that had changes instead of the more generic message. This was a challenge for me for one of my first tickets because I really needed to develop a good understanding of how the different parts of the app were working together. So the scraper, the calendar, the use alerts, and the bills. I spent a lot of time just using ByBug and walking through how the information was flowing through the calendar models methods. Once I did get a successful text message alert, that was a big accomplishment for me.
Thank you.
Hi again. My biggest challenge also was working with the existing code base, but also one that is like such a legacy app and that it's been around for a while, because you have things that start to like depreciate and you need to like update them and upgrade them, and you need to make sure that the gems and packages that you're using are like okay for the current Rails version you're using. So that's probably the biggest challenge that like I still encounter to this day, but it's a good challenge. I like it. And then my biggest learning and most enjoyed moment was when I built our legislator lookup tool. It's replacing GovPredict. It sunsetted back in 2023. So we needed a new tool. We were going to just embed and like link to a website outside of Upstate. But after a little bit of research, we found that the Google Civic API would work for our needs and that it could interact directly with our database. And so it was really fun getting to like build the API and like read Google's documentation. They've got stellar documentation, and have it like interact back with our code base. The most challenging part of it wasn't the API, it was the CSS to make that modal like that size. It took me like 2 weeks to figure that part out. But yeah, that was my favorite part and my biggest challenges.
Thank you.
Okay, so for me, one of my biggest challenges is just like my other coworkers is not feeling like you're going to break the app that already exists, and being comfortable changing everything, as well as some of my bigger challenges in the tickets that I've been working on recently is getting back into JavaScript, from mainly working with Ruby. So like the select all feature that we have on the My Bills table, that took some work and some practice, but it does work, and I didn't break the app, so I'm happy about that. So yeah, just kind of continue to work on even like different aspects of coding that I kind of either forgot or just needed a good refresher on.
Okay, thank you.
so my biggest challenge was also working within a legacy code base, just because it's so much different than a code base that you've created from scratch. It involves so much more puzzle solving. Like you have to figure out like what existing piece fits where and how they fit together, and everything is connected in kind of like a huge web, and you have to like detangle it kind of to in order to not break things. But one of my more recent enjoyable learning experiences, I worked on a lot of smaller stuff so far, and one of them was figuring out how to display the primary sponsor of a bill. And this information is split across two different models. And so I had to write some logic that takes these two models and like puts them against each other and puts out the right information to the user. And one issue that I had with it that I was able to get some good help from the team is that the last names were the suffixes to people's names, like PhD or like the second or and etc. were being counted as people's last names. And so there's just so many like small things that you have to catch like that. And it can be really fun, actually. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us and listening to our presentation on Upstate. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over for questions.
There was one question in that chat, would be great to get y'all's input on too, is there a downside to scraping?
The major downside that I know of is that we're relying on an external website and for them to stay consistent in how they display it. So for instance, if they change an element tag or anything like that, and we're relying on that to scrape a certain text from the page, if they change that, then we won't be scraping it. So that's definitely one issue. Another issue is that when their website goes down, our app doesn't scrape live data anymore. So we're reliant on them to stay up to date also.
And then another one's, how often is scraping adjusted?
So we have actually multiple scrapers that run at different points throughout the day. We have one scraper that scrapes everything for all the bills that runs once a day. We also have a scraper that gets the actions that are scheduled to be discussed for the day, and those run every 5 minutes. And then, so we send out custom alerts every 5 minutes when anything gets detected from those actions.
And it looks like Miguel has hand up for another question. Miguel, you want to come off mute? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, good morning, everyone. I was just curious, what exactly is the legislation transparency issue? Could you elaborate on that? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I can go into that a little bit. So a little bit more of kind of like the, I guess the product history, why the why behind this tool was from a lot of the times when the state legislature, when their bills are going through our houses, they go into committees to discuss, and sometimes it's in the committees that changes get made and don't actually get out to the public until it's kind of goes to the floor to a vote. And so one of the biggest benefits to this tool is that anything that happens in committee when they make an update, the alerts that Chuck talked about get sent out via email or text message about if there are certain terms or statutes that are mentioned in the updates. People would kind of get that notice. One specific example was back, I think it was like somewhere around like 2017 or so. There was a legislation through the North Carolina legislature, the General Assembly, that was a bill ostensibly addressing motorcycle helmet safety. And during the legislative process in one of the committees, they basically did something called gut and replace. So they just took that bill and replaced the language with provisions that limited abortion. And so that was like, had nothing to do with motorcycle safety. So that's kind of like the transparency issues and like kind of keeping our elected official accountable for making these last minute changes like that.
Thank you.
And Alton has a question. Do we know if the government has any plans to make this info available via API? Why API when you can still have other script? Yeah, so I don't know that they will ever do that. Our state legislature is not the most transparent. There's actually legislation this past session to make it even less transparent in terms of limiting what records could be considered public records. So.
What's your
Anybody else?
look like? Because I know that it sounds like some backend developers are working hard on the CSS, but I was just like, is it just vanilla sort of front end framework or I don't even know. I was just curious. It doesn't sound like there's React going on here.
Yes, you're correct. We don't have any React. Any of like that interactive things you saw on the page are all vanilla JavaScript.
And who's doing that?
We all wrote that custom, except for a couple packages we use for like the date range pickers. Yeah, just about everything else was custom written by us.
That's really cool. I've been coding in vanilla recently just to do it, you know, and it's so hard. I hate it.
I wanted to mention, there's a couple people who asked about, oh, it would be, you know, are there plans to have, take Upstate to other states, or, oh, wouldn't it be great if they had Upstate in this state? And, I'm sure the team can talk about why that's challenging, because every state's legislature is different. But I did want to mention, if there are folks from Code the Dream who have connections with, in particular, it would be like really large organizations that are tracking, that work on policy issues in your state that you work with or that you know of. I think that Code the Dream would love to expand Upstate to other states, but it would require basically completely rebuilding the app because every state is so completely different. So we would need a really good partner to work with who's really interested in such a resource in their state. But if we do have Code the Dream folks all over the country, so if anybody is in touch with those groups that are doing that kind of work, you know, let us know. But maybe Chuck or Ricky or somebody else on the team wants to speak to that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's that technical part of the things, Lori, that you mentioned, and then there's also the strategic part of like, there are some states that have more transparency than others, and there are some states that already have robust tools available, third-party tools available. So it's kind of like a combination of funding, technical feasibility, and strategic need.
What would be needed to, you know, create that partnership exactly? Because you're looking for a team that's already involved with, I don't know, making legislation more transparent to people, if it is already transparent. If like the first step of it is already available, right? Like if that information is available to scrape, for example. Or if there's an API, which, you know, very rarely happens. But my question is like, if that doesn't exist, then it doesn't happen. I'm sorry, I don't have a good question there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's kind of like a case by case basis with like stakeholders who know the state landscape well, who know the state legislature well, and who know what the available or unavailable tools are.
Quick question, what are next steps for Upstate?
A couple things that we have in the works. Probably the next like really big feature that we're looking to deploy between the current short session and the next long session is the ability for larger organizations to create groups for their users, so that the groups can collaborate together on tracking bills. So that's one, and then also expanding our alerts to the transcripts from the committee meetings is another one next after that.
Any other questions from anybody?
Yeah, I have one. I was just curious on Lori's request on maybe meeting additional partners in different states. What exactly would be those partners? Would those be legislative people or just knowing people that know how to work the tech part, or what exactly?
Yeah, go ahead, Ricky.
Oh, I was thinking kind of ultimately it's kind of maybe either like a group or of stakeholders or maybe a few who like I said, right, like know the state landscape well politically, so know how the legislature works, know what tools are available, and also has resources to help get it off the ground. Resources, I mean like money, to be explicit, but.
Anybody else? Lots of kudos in the chat. I can say for whatever it's worth. When I was a reporter a million years ago, I was in Florida, and they do have a very robust public information law, or at least they used to. And even so, having a tool that delivered what this delivers with the speed at which it delivers it would have been completely game changing. It's really a remarkable thing that you guys have worked on and built.